One thing we all have in common is that we only get one life. But for many of us, somewhere along the way, we get stuck and we don't know what to do. In the spring of 2020, we all experienced a major disruption in our day-to-day lives with the COVID pandemic and the quarantine. When you tell a parent that their kid cannot go to school for a year, you're gonna see a look like you've never seen before. And then when you tell them that they're gonna be on a Zoom call right next to you on your Zoom call for the duration of that year, that look is gonna get even worse. You're gonna see a look of disbelief. We all felt stuck in that situation. The things that these teachers learned about our lives through the lens of those Zoom calls can never be unseen and unheard, because a second grader doesn't know how to hit the mute button. So we all felt stuck. I knew that I was really stuck in life when it was that second year of the pandemic. My kids had gone back to school. It was 2021. My freedom had been restored to my work hours, but on a typical midweek day, I found myself shuffling around my house aimlessly. It was like I couldn't pick my feet up off the ground. I was literally dragging, and it was a metaphor for what I was feeling in my life, dragging along. It all came to a head, though, when my wife in her art studio around the corner called out to me, and she said, "You know you're moaning, right?" And I didn't. I was shocked. I knew I was shuffling aimlessly. I had no idea that I was in such a sad and depressive place inside that I was audibly moaning and groaning. And so this really concerned me. And then she called one of my best friends, Drew McClure, and she said, "Hey, can you just come and walk with him tonight?" And I remember initially feeling embarrassed because I thought, am I in such a bad state that I need people just to come and visit me? And I wanted to put up a fight, but I was internally so exhausted that I couldn't put up a fight. So I just accepted it. So that night, Drew and I walked around my neighborhood, and I tried to unload this heavy burden that I've been carrying. And I said things like, I'm just not motivated in my work. And I've always experienced that motivation. I'm not excited about anything in my life. I can't think of like a project or a creative thing to invest my time into that I actually think is going to mean something and give me some sort of boost. I shared that, I'd lost my drive. I felt like I didn't have the juice anymore and that my fire had gone out. And the scariest thing for me was I didn't think I would truly be able to get it back. And so that night, to be clear, it wasn't the pandemic that caused this. I think the pandemic just exacerbated the crisis that I was already in. As my world got smaller, the pain became more acute. And as I walked with Drew, a seed was kind of planted in my soul that night, and it was something like this. I heard, "It's time to get brutally honest. It's time to get brutally honest." And for me, it was, could I admit that I was not happy in my life? Could I admit that I was internally at an all-time low? And even admitting that just felt like a failure to me, like I was failing in life. What's wrong with me if I'm at an all-time low? Could I admit that maybe there's a new chapter that I'm supposed to step into, and I'm just afraid to do it? I don't know what's going to happen if I take that risk. And again, for me, I was caught between the crosswinds of questioning my career path, but even deeper than that, there was a nagging sense that I was straying from the essence of who I was as a person and what I was here to do. I'm not sure what crisis you're facing right now or what crisis you will inevitably face. But I'm willing to bet that your map has failed you in some way. Because we always think that A plus B is going to equal C. And when it doesn't, we find ourselves in these crisis moments. Maybe you did everything right and you still failed. Maybe you lived exactly how you thought you were supposed to, and that person still died. That tragedy still happened. What do you do in that moment? Maybe you succeeded. So you completed the map. You hit all the milestones. You hit the goals that you wanted, and you got to the end of it, and you said, is this it? Now what? I did what I was supposed to do, and it didn't get me to where I thought. I know there's more. There's got to be more. So when we face one of these crises, I think there's 3 common responses that we can have to a crisis in our life. Number 1 is to numb out. To numb out. And this is basically doing anything to avoid facing the pain. We're essentially trying to escape the pain that we feel. And this can come in all different forms. It can come through entertainment, through social media, through shopping, through travel, through video games. I mean, pick your poison. And there can be more serious crutches that we fall into, alcohol or drug dependence or some other addiction. But the thing that's the same is that we're just trying to avoid the pain. These are attempts that we're hoping can alleviate the crisis, but really just kicks the can down the road. And we're thinking, I'll just deal with this later, but we don't deal with the root of it. And kicking the can down the road never solves anything. The second response we can have in a crisis is to act out. So if numbing out's more of a passive energy, acting out's more of this aggressive energy. It's saying, I'm so frustrated by what I feel inside that I'm seeking some kind of thrill, some kind of transcendence to get out of my life. And this can come in the form of, extreme sports, risky kind of living behavior. This can come in the form of affairs, gambling, extreme groups. There's a lot of people that feel such a disillusionment with their life. They form these extreme groups, and sometimes that acting out comes in the form of violence. You're so frustrated that you're just trying to find some way to deal with that pain. Sometimes it's not physical, sometimes it's verbal, and we act out on the people that are closest to us because we don't know where else to put that energy. Some people wreck their lives because they think that's easier than facing the pain. And it's easier to wreck your life and kind of go start a new one than to actually be accountable to explaining to the people in your life what you're feeling and what you're going through. But what if we can rebuild our lives without having to ditch the one that we've known up to this point? The third response to a crisis is the hardest, but the healthiest. It's not to numb out. It's not to act out. It's to dig in. To dig in. And what do I mean by that? Bill Burnett, the Stanford professor who's helped thousands of people design their lives, said this: you can't solve a problem you're not willing to have. For me, I got to the point on that walk with Drew that night where I was saying, you know what? I'm willing to admit I have this problem. And that's the first step to digging in. It is acceptance. I'm willing to admit I have this problem. I'm willing to face the pain, to admit I'm in a state of crisis, and to say I want something to change. So that's the first part of digging in. The second part of digging in is answering what I call the big questions. And this is zooming way out on your life. It's asking these deeper questions, like, what am I really living for? Why does all this matter? Questions like, if I knew I wouldn't fail, what would I do? Questions like, what decisions am I going to regret not making on my deathbed? Most of our regrets aren't about things that we did do. Most of our regrets are about things we didn't do. So what things are you going to regret at the end of your life that you didn't go for, decisions you didn't make? If I wasn't afraid of rejection and embarrassment, what would I do? And this is something I've learned in this process, that the silver lining of a crisis is that we get to reorient our lives. We get to say, is this the direction I want to go? Is this the person I want to be? Is this the story that I want my life to tell? So you've got acceptance, you got the big questions. And then the third part of digging in is journeying into the unknown. Journeying into the unknown. This is necessary because your old maps have failed you. You're going in a new direction. You're going where you've never journeyed before. You know where the monotony and the crisis has led you. It's the same thing. You feel stuck on that treadmill. You don't know what the journey into the unknown is going to turn into. And I want to tell you, this is the best place to be. And it's going to be scary, but it's going to be exciting because you don't know where you're going to go next. You don't know who you're going to be at the end of this journey. So it's almost like this quest that you're being called into. But this is what it's going to be. It's going to be waking up to your life. So many people fantasize about, if I had their life, this is what I would do. If I had their kind of resources, their money, their connections, their friends, this is what I would do. And we can spend our whole life wasting our life fantasizing what it would be basically to live someone else's life. So this journey into the unknown, this digging in, it's you waking up to, this is the only life I have. It's my life. Am I going to actually live it? And that's the exciting part about it. You can turn this crisis moment into an opportunity where you get to create something new. You get to create a new definition of success. You get to create a new map in this moment. But this can be a daunting journey. I do not suggest you make this journey alone. People drown every day. We see it every day. People just drown in the place they get stuck because they don't have anybody to go on this journey with. So what do you need to do? If you're going to dig in, if you're not just going to numb out and act out, but you're going to dig in, what's it going to take? You're going to need a guide. And a guide is someone who's been where you are, but they've survived to tell the story. A good guide encourages you along the way and reminds you of who you are. You're going to need a clear process because without a process, we just feel powerless. We're just running on the treadmill, thinking the same thoughts, trying the same things, and nothing is really changing. But when you get a clear process, it gives you the structure that creates traction. So instead of running on the treadmill, you feel like you've got traction. And then the last thing is you need a community. You need a group of people that you can be honest and vulnerable with if you're going to make this journey. I saw this quote from Kobe Bryant last night. I love it. He says, the biggest mistake most people make is they think they have time. Kobe retired at 37. He died at 41. He lived with a sense of urgency, aliveness. He didn't know that was going to be the end of his life. Things happen every day where we just see the scope, the finality of our life. I want to encourage you to act. To act. Don't wait for tomorrow. How can you become awake to your life today and live in such a way that you're proud of the decisions that you're making, that you respect your own life? I want to get to the end of my life and say, maybe I failed, maybe I didn't accomplish everything I tried, but you know what? I respect the journey I took. I respect my own life. I'm proud of it. Proud to tell this story. I would encourage you, don't give up, don't settle, don't compromise. Live in such a way that you're proud of the story that your life told.